Israeli and Hamas negotiators have met in Egypt for indirect talks on U.S. President Donald Trump's Gaza peace plan.
The negotiations fall on the second anniversary of the Israel-Hamas war, which left more than 1,200 people dead in Israel. More than 250 others were taken hostage. Mr. Trump said great progress has been made on the deal, expressing optimism that it will be finalized in the coming days. But several sticking points remain, including Hamas's disarmament and the IDF's withdrawal from the enclave. Well, joining us now for more analysis is Dr. H A Hellyer, Senior Associate Fellow at the Royal United Services Institute for Defense. Dr. Hellyer, thank you very much for joining us on the show. I want to start by asking you about reports on day one of talks. The reports say the parties agreed on most of the first phase terms, which we also know include hostage release and a ceasefire. So focusing on that particular word, I'm curious, what would be areas outside that most that still needs to be worked out? And also, are there potentially obstacles, for this opening phase?
So thank you very much for inviting me on the program. Just to put the framing into context here, October 7th is when the Hamas-led attack took place on Israel. In the past 2 years, you've had probably around anything from 65 to 165,000 people dead in Gaza as a result of Israel's war of devastation on the occupied territory. Which is why Israel is currently at the dock at the International Court of Justice on genocide charges, and the International Criminal Court has indicted Benjamin Netanyahu as a war criminal. So just putting that in context, what we're seeing here is not just about the return of the hostages that Hamas and affiliated groups are holding in the occupied Gaza Strip. It's also about providing relief to the people of Gaza after 2 years of a really incredibly devastating war. I think that when it comes to the hostages, there's a suspicion that Hamas now views the hostages, I think might actually view them as a liability. They've more or less agreed, as far as we can see, to release the hostages, all of them, in exchange for prisoner releases of Palestinians that the Israelis have detained, many of whom are being detained without any due process or trial. They're not insisting, as far as we can see, on the agreement of a full withdrawal of Israeli forces from the occupied Gaza Strip before they released the hostages. And this was a sticking point before, that they saw the hostages as their only point of leverage and did not want to release the hostages without having a confirmed end of the war on Gaza. So this is where the new sticking point, I think, is likely to be. What's the extent of Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, and what are we going to see vis-a-vis disarmament of Hamas, which of course is discussed in the proposed deal, but is very murky in terms of the details. The Israelis, of course, want Hamas to be completely disarmed and essentially for Hamas to surrender. It's not unlikely that Hamas will refuse to do precisely that. They've already said very publicly that they intend to disarm only in the context of a Palestinian state being established. And of course, the Israelis don't want that to happen. So disarmament and withdrawal, I think, are the two sticking points that we have yet to see a resolution to. But I do think that Washington is going to push very hard for there to be some sort of a deal that's come to incredibly soon, like in the next few days.
Indeed. Mr. Trump is pushing for speed. I wonder, what do you make of the timing and involvement of key negotiators, because they're only going to be joining the talks in midweek, and also this language of Mr. Trump's language of move fast. Does this rhetoric a helpful pressure or counterproductive?
No, I think it's quite helpful, actually. The major problem with these negotiations over the past 2 years, and this has been reported multiple times in the Israeli press, is that on the Israeli side, negotiators would be sent, but without a mandate. Negotiations would take place. The Israeli negotiators would agree to certain points, and then the goalposts would be changed by Tel Aviv, by Benjamin Netanyahu. Again, this has been reported very widely in the Israeli press at multiple points over the past 2 years. That's not going to be possible this time. I think Trump has made it very clear to Netanyahu, I want a deal. I want one yesterday. And don't be... I shan't repeat certain language on the show, but it was reported that he said, don't be so negative. Take this as a win. Now, that's about the next few days, though. That's about return of the hostages. That's about the prisoner exchanges. I don't think that that's necessarily going to be the case when it comes to Israeli withdrawal. The Israelis have no intention of withdrawing from Gaza. The Israelis intend on maintaining complete security control over Gaza, despite the fact that it's an occupied territory, as confirmed by the International Court of Justice and the vast majority of the international community. They don't want to leave Gaza. They don't want the IDF to be withdrawn completely from Gaza. And even in the plan, it talks about a perimeter where the Israelis would stay until the Israelis assess that they can leave. Okay, so I think that this is going to be a sticking point, and I'm not sure that Washington, after the release of the hostages, is going to be keeping up the pressure.
Which is something I want to ask you further about. Dr. Hellyer, President Trump himself believes an agreement on Gaza will pave the way for a Middle East peace process that could reshape the region. I'm wondering about your thoughts about that particular belief, particularly from the perspective of the Palestinians. I mean, we know the devil's in the details, and only point 12, as far as I can tell from that 20-point peace plan, broadly acknowledges self-determination, and that comes with conditions as well.
It's a good question. I should point out it's not about simply the Palestinians that have concerns in this regard. It's the entirety of the region. And I think it's, frankly, the overwhelming majority of the international community. They want to see Palestinian self-determination realized and manifested in a Palestinian state. It's not a reward to the Palestinians, and it's not a punishment upon the Israelis. It's an acknowledgement that Palestinians are a people who deserve the right to self-determination. I think that this is why you've seen the overwhelming, again, majority of the world's nations recognize a Palestinian state, not over the last few weeks, but over the last few decades. Whether or not Donald Trump is willing to actually apply pressure on the Israelis to do that, I think is another question entirely. We haven't seen over not just the last few months or even indeed the last 2 years, but over many, many years, a willingness from Washington, D.C. to apply pressure and use leverage upon the Israelis to ensure that the Israelis adhere to international law. And certainly in the past couple of years, it's gotten much, much worse, which is why you've seen the Israelis strike multiple countries in the region, occupy the territory multiple times over the past 2 years. Lebanon, Syria, strike the state of Qatar, bomb Iran. Despite Iran being a very odious regime, it doesn't justify ignoring international law in this regard. So I do think that there are serious question marks around how much pressure is going to be brought to bear on this Israeli government before it really just completely goes out of control again.
Understood. We do have to leave it there for now. Dr. Hellyer, thank you so much for talking to us this morning. Dr. H A Hellyer is Senior Associate Fellow at the Royal United Services Institute for Defense.